All right, yo. Here we are. On the mics, on film.
We live.
We're live.
We're live.
So I'm your host, Eric. I'm the host because I'm just going to be the first one to start talking. This is our introduction to our show that we're developing called Reeling in the Years. It's a history podcast, and I think we're all really excited to talk about history a little bit. And this one's going to have a bit of an interesting spin on it because, as the name entails, reeling in the years versus going over history on a very macro scale, on a very era-by-era basis where you're talking about, the Prohibition era or the 1950s or this or that part. Each episode, we're just going to focus on one random year in history, and we're just going to do a deep dive on that specific year alone and just find any sort of interesting developments, anything, large events that happened, and kind of see what we can draw out of just what happens in one single year. And with me, I have the other 2/3 of the podcast here.
What's up? So I'm Brandon Britton. I'm a CCM media major, but I'm also a history minor. So this is when Eric came to me with this idea. This was, really interesting to me, just for the fact of I like history, I like media. So combining the two.
Who doesn't?
It's perfect.
And I'm Ibrahim. I'm not a history minor, but I'm definitely interested in teaching and learning about whatever happened since the last 100 years. So this is exciting.
Yeah. I'm also a media production major, and I watch the History Channel with my dad a lot. And, I got a public school level education of history, so that's sort of my baseline. And then anything from here is just additional, knowledge and wisdom we're kind of adding on top. And I think we all kind of have a diversity of interests and kind of backgrounds into sort of what we look into. Yeah. So for each year, I think we're going to kind of do our own individual deep dives as far as like events and happenings and historical accounts, and sort of draw what interests us the most personally to talk about and go over in each episode. So that's kind of what I'm most excited about, is like the personalized element of it and kind of what facts and statistics kind of catch us the most. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Yeah,
totally.
I definitely like that. I like the idea that you had of just making it random.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. That's really cool because,
like
I said, just even like the first year, some of the stuff we was doing, research in 1924, I did not know stuff that was happening 100 years ago. Like, that's just not a year that I really took attention to, but it's really interesting.
This is the year 2024. So for episode 1, we wanted to reel this back just 100 years, just as a touchstone. So not completely random for our first episode, but down the line we'll devise some kind of way. We'll probably put a bunch of years into a hat, and we'll just pick out some random year in history. We could put a lot of numbers in that hat to pick from. But we're going to start exactly 100 years ago and just kind of use that as a benchmark for sort of comparing how far we've come in that time, and how different, but also maybe how not so different things were a whole century ago from this point. Should we just go down this list of like things we have?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot to cover in 1924.
A ton happened. I mean, do you have any favorites that you've discovered so far in your research?
I think the interesting one for me was the first Winter Olympics started in France that year. That was like a odd thing to happen in France. So.
Do you think they did the ski jump?
I definitely feel they did it. I definitely feel they did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Something interesting to me is definitely the fall of the Ottoman Empire. I keep telling these guys this. But
how much time does it take for a whole empire to fall? Does that happen over the course of a year, or was it like one day they just threw in the towel and they were like, we're no longer the Ottoman Empire? I'm sorry.
Definitely not one thing. Like most things in history is not one thing. That's like something they teach you with everything, because it's like a lot of different factors that played into it. It was like probably a 100-year process.
I'm really excited to really get into the weeds
Yeah.
of what happened this year. I know we kind of just bounced all over the place for a little bit, but if anything, that should demonstrate our excitement to talk about this. And I'm excited to pick a new random year too. And
Yeah,
just
me
find
too.
out.
See what the next one.
That's the best. Fall into another rabbit
It
hole
is.
of what
I'm excited
this
too.
and that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some bullet points here of things that happened that I haven't even said yet, but I'm just gonna save it for the full episode. You guys gotta stay tuned.
Yeah.
Tune back in episode 1.
Yep.
We're getting into it. 1924. If you want to follow along, read a few articles yourself on what happened and see if we end up touching on it or covering it. And
cool.
follow along.
Sweet.